Alright guys, we gotta talk more about the Mercedes rumor. Holy moly. Reuters just came out with a report that Mercedes is looking into investing into NIO for R&D purposes. Now on my channel, we've talked about Mercedes multiple times in the past. It's very interesting that for the first time in a long while that a credible article like Reuters has reported on this. So it's quite important that we go into this article a little bit in depth. Of course, it talks about how there's actually internal conflict within Mercedes about partnering with NIO, potentially lowering their status, which I think is absolutely absurd, because if you look at it now here in China, Mercedes and Audi, their EVs do not sell that well here in China. And they absolutely do need the technology from NIO. For example, the autonomous driving solution and also the battery swap for Mercedes. Now, there is a conspiracy here in China, all right, that the tech day that just happened, that William Li hosted, was actually a presentation for Mercedes, for them to better understand NIO's entire R&D and NIO's entire ecosystem and NIO's technology, for them to better make their decision to pull the trigger. Now, a lot of you guys are thinking whether or not Mercedes has already pulled the trigger. Now, funny enough, during the Q&A session of after Tech Day, one person actually approached William Li with this question: what's going on with Mercedes? And he just simply scuffed it up. He said, "Oh, about that. Next question." So it really shows that they're not allowed to talk about it. It's sealed in NDA. Now, what's really interesting about this article is that it says that NIO actually approached Mercedes for the deal, which we all thought that it was Mercedes that approached NIO for the deal. And it says that Mercedes is facing lots of resistance from the R&D department within Mercedes. I mean, this is understandable. You're doing R&D for Mercedes, but then Mercedes chooses to use the R&D tech from NIO. That would be a big slap in the face for their own R&D department. But the fact of the matter is, Mercedes really doesn't have a choice in this situation, because their sales in China have been so bad that they had to shut down their factories here. So officially, NIO has denied these talks, saying that they're not happening, all that kind of stuff, even though there's rumors leaking from within NIO that it's happening. And then also, very importantly, Mercedes actually said that they are in talks with a lot of auto companies, including William Li from NIO. Now, my general feeling from this article is that it seems like Mercedes' CEO really wants to go forward with this deal. Of course, NIO is all open arms, wants to go forward with this deal, but it seems like internally there's a lot of conflict within Mercedes that kind of want to block this deal. So it's more about them resolving their internal conflict. But I think as time progresses, things are going to get more favorable for NIO because of the declining sales with Mercedes, their EVs here in China. And it's become a trend, basically, with Audi investing in IM, building cars together, Volkswagen with XPeng to build cars together. You know, funny enough, the ID series actually is doing fairly okay, fairly decent in China. It's not doing terrible. I can see quite a few of those on the road. So it's actually surprising that they decided to co-op with XPeng. It shows how much they value their technology and R&D. But then on the flip side, actually Mercedes needs this deal more than Volkswagen needs XPeng. Now, the consensus within a lot of the new employees here in China and also in Germany is that the deal is going to go through, and that the people at Mercedes are really interested in battery swap. Now, if we take the deal with XPeng as a point of reference, Mercedes could possibly invest in NIO for an equity stake, and then in exchange for R&D and also building out a few cars together, or outright using NIO's technology in their cars. Now, the reason why we're not hearing anything officially from NIO and also Mercedes is the fact that it's all under NDA. Now, the article says they haven't really agreed on how much they're going to invest, but I can tell you they probably already have a ballpark deal that they're planning to go forward with, and they're seeking internal improvement within the company. NIO can't say anything about it because, of course, that would make it public information about how much they're willing to invest and what they want. But they've had those initial talks for quite a while, since April. NIO's CEO pretty much knows, how much money they're trying to get from this deal, and Mercedes CEO probably pretty much knows what they're trying to get out of this deal as well. And for Mercedes, it's just to get everybody on board. And look, the fact of the matter is, the wind is all blowing in this one direction. You feel the wind blowing that one direction. You can't see the sailboat yet, but you kind of know that the sailboat is going to be going in that same direction, all right? And with these negotiations, it could also be very sensitive to pricing. For example, NIO's share price. If NIO's share price is high, back when these rumors were initially leaked, at 13, 14, 15, that might not have been a good deal for Mercedes. But now the share price is relatively lower at 8. It might be a fantastic deal for Mercedes to go in. With the same amount of money, they might be able to buy even more equity. Of course, these negotiations are very flexible. And as the share price goes down further, it's more likely for NIO to get this deal with Mercedes. At the end of the day, it has everything to do with how much money they're going to spend and how much they're going to get in return for it. Now, NIO wants this investment pretty badly because it doesn't really just symbolize the amount of money you get, but it also symbolizes your value in the R&D that you spent, and that the R&D you spent, the shareholders' money that you burned, was actually worth it and worth something, and that we're getting paid back essentially for all those money spent. So I think that NIO is really willing to adjust the amount of money that they're getting. That's why Willem Lee's not going to talk about specific numbers. To get this deal symbolizes more than just money, but also status. All right, they can brag about, our technology is so good that Mercedes even had to partner up with us. It becomes a marketing tool, essentially. So in that sense, it's also reasonable why we're not getting any news about it. The negotiations are ongoing. Terms are probably being changed. And of course, NIO wants this deal. Mercedes wants this deal as well. It's just how can they match it up in the middle? It's very interesting how some people say that the whole entire tech day was made to let Mercedes know what's going on. Very interesting. I like this approach. And after the guys at Mercedes see this whole entire tech day presentation, they probably have a better understanding about the status that NIO was at, which is actually above that of Mercedes in terms of R&D tech. So guys, just be patient with this. We're not going to get the deal tomorrow. And understand that Mercedes is the one that's at a disadvantage and needs this deal more than NIO. NIO needs the money. Mercedes needs the R&D tech fast for their cars if they want to even sell here in China. All right, there's one of my sales rep friends over there. I'm gonna go help him out, try to sell some more NIOs. He's right there, talking to the customer in front of the ES6. So guys, I just actually helped them out, and yeah, they're gonna go ahead and buy a car. So that's pretty nice. And now they're choosing the color, so awesome.